Microphones are turned on, the cameras are rolling. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to tonight's emergency meeting of the City of Geneva City Council. This meeting is called to order. I kindly ask our recording secretary, the city administrator, Ms. Dawkins, to please take the roll call. Those of you participating by phone, please indicate your name prior to your vote. Thank you.
Bruno?
Bruno, here.
Burkhart? Here. Clements?
Clements, here.
Ruby? Here. Caven?
Here.
Kilberg?
Here. Kilberg.
Maladra?
Here.
Marks?
Here.
McGowan?
McGowan here.
Swanson?
Here.
Mayor, all present and accounted for.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, this emergency meeting of the City Council is being called to order with respect to 5 Illinois compiled statutes, section 102-2.02, which, in addition, given the unprecedented and rapidly changing circumstances surrounding COVID-19, the state and federal recommendations regarding social distancing and other precautions, that the governor of the state of Illinois declared a state of emergency on March 9th, 2020, that the President of the United States of America declared a national state of emergency on March 13, 2020, and the requirement under Section 5 Illinois compiled statutes, Section 120-2.01, and 5 Illinois compiled statutes, 120, Section 7 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act, and that a quorum of the City Council must be physically present at all meetings of the City Council. The corporate authorities believe it is in the best interest of the health and welfare of the citizens of Geneva to adopt the following ordinance. Please note, prior consideration of the ordinance, public notice of any special meeting except a meeting held in the event of a bona fide emergency is required. This City Council, I believe, will agree that this is indeed a bona fide emergency. The ordinance clause reads, "Be it ordained by the corporate authorities of the City of Geneva, Kane County, Illinois, Section 1, the corporate authorities hereby find that a state of emergency and local disaster exists as of March 15, 2020, hereinafter referred to as state of emergency." Section 2, pursuant to 65 Illinois compiled statutes, Section 5-11-1-6, the corporate authorities hereby grant to the mayor the extraordinary power and authority to exercise by executive order during the state of emergency such of the powers of the corporate authorities as may be reasonably necessary to respond to the emergency. The mayor may determine a state of emergency exists when, 1, the President of the United States of America declares a national state of emergency, 2, the governor of the state of Illinois declares a state of emergency, or 3, the World Health Organization declares a pandemic. The mayor shall not exercise such extraordinary power and authority except after signing, under oath, a statement finding that such standards have been met, setting forth facts to substantiate such findings, describing the nature of the emergency, and declaring that a state of emergency exists. Such statement shall be filed with the clerk of the municipality as soon as practicable. A state of emergency declared as provided in this section shall expire not later than the adjournment of the first regular meeting of the corporate authorities after the state of emergency is declared. Section 3, the mayor, city administrator, or designees are hereby authorized and directed to take such actions as permitted by applicable law necessary to implement this ordinance. And Section 4, this ordinance is effective from and after its passage. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I want to pay special kudos to our directors of all the departments, as well as our city attorney, Mr. Finson, our finance manager, Rita Cruz, and also our IT manager, Pete Collins, who joined us today at 5 o'clock at a meeting at the Geneva Fire Department headquarters where we discussed not only what was evolving, but how we best should respond to what was evolving. And that is why we are here this evening. So with that, are there any questions or comments? First, we'll take those questions or comments from the phone. Anyone wishing to speak?
Bruno has a question.
Alderman Bruno. Oh, forgive me, Alderman Bruno. Let's ask for a motion regarding ordinance 2020-10.
So moved.
Motion by Alderman Marks.
Second.
Second by Alderman
Clements.
Burkhart. Alderman Bruno, question or comments?
Thank you, Mayor. So the language at the end, where is it? Expires no later than the adjournment of the next meeting of the corporate authority, or it's somewhere in there.
Correct.
So basically that means the end of tomorrow's meeting. This is in force.
No, that's incorrect, and let me clarify. Tomorrow's meeting is canceled. In fact,
Okay.
all public meetings of the City of Geneva held in this building or other buildings are canceled. This ordinance, in essence, implies and is in force through April 6th of 2020. If it needs to go further, then of course that would be communicated.
Okay, thank you.
Would anyone like an explanation as to why? I'd be happy to turn to the city attorney, Mr. Finson.
So,
Yes.
yeah, so
Comments
there's
would be
a
good.
lot going on here in a very short period of time for you to digest it. So, there are a couple provisions that deal with emergencies. The city, and you'll see this outlined in the ordinance, and for anybody that's watching at home, they can see this in the ordinance as well. The city has has some authority pursuant to state statute in the event of an emergency. One of those provisions is the section that we're referencing here, 65 ILCS 511-1-6. That allows essentially the mayor to exercise the authority of the corporate authorities, which is the city council and the mayor, without there being a meeting, if there is in fact an emergency. The concern that we've had and we've talked about is that given how rapidly things are changing, there's a question about whether or not we're going to be able to get together. Unfortunately, in most instances, if you were a regular corporation, we'd say, big deal. We're just going to do this online, and we have our quorum, and we're here we can be present that way. Unfortunately, the Open Meetings Act in the state of Illinois requires that at least a majority of you have to be here physically in order for there to be a quorum, even though some of you are participating by phone. The fear is that that may, given the recommendations of the CDC and those sorts of things, the fear is that we shouldn't really be conducting business that way, or it may become impossible to conduct business that way in the future. And so, in order to comply with the Open Meetings Act, the thought was that we would allow the mayor to be able to have that authority to make a decision in the interim, and at the same time, if the thought would be that he would consult with you individually, and again to make sure that we're in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. It may be that the state, in its wisdom, will decide to temporarily amend the Open Meetings Act to allow city councils to meet telephonically, assuming that everyone can participate and so on and so forth. But there are concerns, obviously, about the public. The whole point of the Open Meetings Act is that the public be able to participate, and logistically, how would that occur? So this seemed like the least worst alternative under the circumstances because it is authorized by the state statute. There's another provision that's referenced, and that is the provision that is 20 ILCS 3305-11. And that is a provision that the mayor has the authority to declare a local disaster. We have adopted, both of these provisions exist in the city code. We've incorporated them in some way in chapter, bear with me here. Sorry about that. In Title III, Chapter 8, and it begins at, again, City Code Section 3-1-8. That first, and that is our emergency, it establishes the Emergency and Management Agency. Section 3-8.7 mirrors more or less the statute that says the mayor can declare a local disaster emergency, and what that will do is that triggers the implementation of our local disaster emergency operations plan. And so the mayor does not need the authority of the city council to do that. So the two things sound similar, but they are different. So one, he can do on his own, but we're asking in the ordinance tonight that you say, yes, there's an emergency and we should implement the local disaster emergency plan and all that involves. And then secondly, that because for the reasons that I've articulated about the Open Meetings Act and the current state of social distancing and some of those things that are being recommended, that you also grant the mayor the authority to declare that there is an emergency and grant him the extraordinary powers to exercise the authority of the corporate authorities as necessary while this state of emergency continues.
Questions or comments from the phone with respect to what the city attorney has just described?
Clemens here with a question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. So with this state of affairs here, if we pass this, so would the mayor be acting on the typical business, the agendas that we see for our regular meetings? Would these be continued, or will most business be halted? And generally, are we just looking at decisions regarding just day-to-day operations right now? So I guess my question is, things like the annexation, for example, that we're on our next meeting, would the mayor make decisions on that, or is that being put on hold?
That's not until the 6th.
Yeah, the only matters that will be considered for action by me and me alone are those matters that were to be considered tomorrow night's at the city council agenda. All of you are probably aware that our next regularly scheduled meeting is not till April 6th anyways. We have no pressing business on March what would that be, the 23rd or 23rd, or of course, that fifth Monday, March 30th. So in that regard, Alderman Clemens, the only matters to be advanced through my powers, if you so grant them, are those matters that were scheduled to be considered at tomorrow night's city council meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And just given the extraordinarily fluid nature of this entire event, I mean, we clearly, none of us know if this is going to be over in April or May or goodness, who knows when. When we get to April 6th, what happens on that date if we are still in a situation where it's highly recommended that we're continuing to implement these social distancing policies, et cetera? Will we just extend that for another month, 2 weeks, or how do we address that?
Well, I can assure you this, that I will be corresponding with and/or calling council members at least weekly with respect to what is transpiring, what is happening, what the recommendations are. If something of great import should arise, then I will certainly be reaching out to the council members by phone. I should also add that the Mayor Pro Tem, Alderman Maladra, who participated in the meetings this afternoon beginning at 5 o'clock, did so primarily because of his role as Mayor Pro Tem, and he has already volunteered his assistance and support in such communication. But I can assure or reassure everyone as well that nothing of import will take place without the consent of the council prior to such action. Standard business operations, no problem. Something of significant results, that would require me personally and professionally the courtesy of reaching out to all of you.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Sure.
Alderman Clements, it may help to note that, so the language that appears in Section 2 of the ordaining clause, that comes, and other than just to make it so that it makes sense in this context, it essentially tracks the state statute. And let me draw your attention and everybody's attention to this, because I do think it is important. So you're granting the mayor, if you adopt this ordinance, the extraordinary power and authority to exercise by executive order during the state of emergency such of the powers of the corporate authorities as may be reasonably necessary to respond to the emergency. So it's not a blank check. The condition here is that whatever he does has to be reasonably necessary to respond to the emergency. So I don't know what that would be, but anything that, if something comes up and there's a need to respond, that he has that ability to do that without having to convene a city council meeting.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the phone? Any questions or comments for either myself, the city administrator, or the city attorney?
Bruno has a question.
Yes, Alderman Bruno?
Thank you, Mayor. So this power naturally flows also to the Mayor Pro Tem should the mayor be absent or incapacitated. That would be correct understanding?
That is correct.
Is that right?
That is
okay.
correct.
What is the line of succession in a worst case scenario if several people become incapacitated, and would the Mayor Pro Tem assign their own pro tem?
Traditionally speaking, that is correct. So if I become incapacitated, Mayor Pro Tem Maladra would be allowed to carry out the powers as so stated. If Alderman Maladra wishes at that time to appoint a Mayor Pro Tem, he has the right to do so.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else on the phone?
There was one other thing.
Yes, sir. Alderman, or excuse me, City Attorney Finson's want to add one more comment, I believe.
So City Administrator Dawkins we had discussed this, and then she reminded me a moment ago that we have reached out to, I want to say it was the Illinois Municipal League?
To the governor.
To the governor's office, asking to remove that prohibition in, at least temporarily, on being able to conduct meetings telephonically. I think we would all agree, and this is what we discussed, is that that would be a preferable course of action, is to be able to accommodate the recommendations of the CDC and other health professionals, while at the same time ensuring that our council and the mayor and all the folks that have been elected to handle the city's business are able to fully participate. So I think ultimately, if we can get that, if that occurs, I think we'll be back here sooner rather than later, or by phone.
Anyone here at the dais? Any questions or comments for myself, the city administrator, or the city attorney? Alderman Caven?
Thank you. And I think that you partially had already answered this. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm following along here correctly. So this is mostly just for something that is related to the actual state of emergency. So this wouldn't be some project we have on the river that somebody shows up and decides 3 or 4 weeks from now they're ready to come to the table to go through this. Something like that would hold until we're back to doing things, you know, normally. So would an example of something that would fall into that category be, and I'm hoping that we don't wind up seeing this, but would this then give you the power to, I know that the governor is closing bars and restaurants for people to dine in. So would this give you the power to, okay, well, we're going to have, you know, businesses in town closed for the next 2 weeks? Or there not going to be people there? I'm trying to get an idea of
Absolutely,
the scope of what this actually is.
And we studied that at great length earlier today. I'm going to have the city attorney respond
Okay.
directly to that question.
You know, what I would say, and I want to exercise caution here, because if we talk about hypotheticals, especially in light of some of the concerns that we saw down in Champaign, when they enacted a state of emergency, I think it's not prudent. I understand the concern, but let me take you back to the language. The language is as may be reasonably necessary to respond to the emergency. So as the city attorney, my opinion would be, if the question was, should we declare should we purchase a new, that's probably a bad example. It's hard to know what we will need to respond to emergency. But if it was something that, normally comes up in the ordinary course of business, that doesn't have anything to do with the emergency, then I would not think that would apply to it. At the same time, what's necessary to respond to the emergency is somewhat in the eye of the beholder. But I think the thinking here is that it would be exercised judiciously and consistent with that. There are some examples that we talked about of things where the corporate authorities have the specific authority to do certain things that you could see coming up in the course of an emergency. That might be the type of thing, but I'm reluctant to go into those specifics for fear that people will think, that there's some agenda here. There isn't. It's just in case.
Yeah, no, and I'm not trying to portray that I think that there's an agenda. I understand that this is something that nobody, I get it, that people have not seen before, but, something like that I would think would generally be, something where there would be extensive conversation. I mean, I guess
No question.
is sort of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, if an appeal came up from, I don't know, historic preservation, right? Or something like that, that wouldn't be.
Wouldn't be considered.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, just as a reminder, all meetings of the corporate authority, whether they be this council or any appointed boards or commissions, are hereby suspended until at least April 6th. It should also be noted that all permit applications are no longer being accepted by the building department. The only inspections that the city will conduct are for life safety matters. In addition, the access to public buildings is being virtually eliminated. If there is a concern that someone has that wishes to speak to someone at Public Works, we can literally accommodate that request through the glass. If someone wishes to speak with a police officer, we can literally do so through the glass. If someone wishes to have a conversation, of course, telephone, email, what have you, is still available. You know, our priority, of course, is to keep the citizens safe and healthy, and obviously, I think our dual responsibility is to keep the employees safe and healthy as well. But again, let me reassure everyone that if something should arise that makes me personally uncomfortable with executing the powers granted within this ordinance, I will reach out to each of you individually or collectively and ask for your consideration and permission. Because I want to assure that those tuning in or those who will no doubt read about this, that we are all in this together, particularly this council with respect to ensuring the continuity of business that ultimately serve our residents, our business owners, and of course, our visitors.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the dais? Alderman Burghardt.
Regarding that continuity of business, I mean, and maybe this is a little off topic, I mean, at what point do you decide that it's not safe for our, Public Works employees to be gathered in this building in close quarters or in City Hall? And, is there an accommodation that's, obviously, some jobs work much better from home than others, especially at Public Works, but I do want to put the employee safety high up there, and I know
Absolutely.
I did see the Park District today. It said that they're shutting down all Geneva Park District facilities, and
Right.
the administration offices are closed, and as a taxpayer,
Yeah.
I understand that. I think all municipalities are going to be trying to figure this out in the coming days.
The department heads, through substantial and robust discussion today, will be delivering information and advice and specific direction to their respective teams first thing tomorrow morning or later this evening. That decision is, of course, up to the department's heads, but rest assured, those contingencies are being taken into consideration. Absolutely. Anything else, City Administrator?
I would say exactly, we are making sure we monitor and follow social distancing. There are those jobs that, quite frankly, can still be accomplished either here or at home, and we will make reasonable accommodations for that. There are those jobs that have to go on regardless of what's going on, like Public Works, Police, and Fire. If there's a water main break, we still have to address it. If there's electric outage, we have to address it. But we are looking at all avenues as to how we can accommodate.
Good, very good. And I hope our residents, and I think everyone is, realizing we need patience and grace during this, and to realize that some of those non-emergency issues are going to take place in a different format or have to wait a while. So, yeah, thank you.
Agreed. Thank you. Anyone else on the dais? Last chance, anyone by the phone or by phone? Ladies and gentlemen, before you, I would entertain a motion to so approve ordinance number 2020-10. I believe we have a motion and a second. Any last-minute comments or questions with respect to ordinance 2020-10? If not, I will ask our recording secretary, the city administrator, Stephanie Dawkins, to please take the roll.
Bruno?
Bruno, aye.
Burkhart?
Aye.
Clements?
Clements, aye.
Ruby? Aye. Caven?
Aye.
Kilberg?
Gilbert, aye.
Maladra?
Aye.
Marks?
Aye.
McGowan?
McGowan, aye.
Swanson?
Aye.
And Mayor, you vote because it's the corporate authorities?
Aye. The vote is 11 affirmative, 0 nay votes, 0 absent. With that, a motion to adjourn would be in order. Alderman Marks makes that motion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 And there's 3 ayes by phone. Is there a 4th aye?
Oh, Bruno, aye.
Fantastic. We are adjourned, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very, very much.